If you ever wanted to understand the American dream not just as an idea, but as a beating heart inside a teenage girl holding a guitar in her bedroom, then you've got to know Taylor Swift's story. It didn't start in flashing lights or red carpets. It began on a Christmas tree farm in Reading, Pennsylvania, with a little girl who had too many feelings and a wild imagination. Her name was Taylor Allison Swift, and before she could walk properly, she was already singing. Her mom, Andrea, noticed it before anyone else, how Taylor was stacking toy blocks, like she had a radio station in her soul. She was born December 13th, 1989, a Sagittarius through and through, ambitious, headstrong, always chasing something bigger than herself. Her dad, Scott, was a stockbroker, all logic and numbers, but he always made room for her to dream. Her younger brother Austin, who she'd later become fiercely close to, was still just a toddler when Taylor's obsession with storytelling began to surface. The Swift family lived on that tree farm for years, surrounded by snowy Decembers, mud-caked boots, and the soft silence of nature. Taylor liked that silence. It gave her space to think. She wrote poems before she understood metaphor, told stories before she could spell every word. Her early life wasn't marked by fame or cameras. It was marked by stage lights at school plays, the creaky wooden boards of community theaters, and hours spent listening to Shania Twain and Faith Hill on the stereo. By age 10, Taylor was performing at local fairs and karaoke contests. She'd step on stage with her oversized boots and a spark in her eyes, and the crowd would go quiet, not because she was famous, but because something in her voice made people listen. That's something you can't teach. She wasn't just singing the notes, she was living in them. But Taylor wasn't interested in just singing other people's songs. She wanted to write her own. She wanted to say something real. At 11 years old, she convinced her mom to drive her all the way to Nashville. They had a stack of demo CDs, just little Taylor covering country songs, and they handed them out to every record label on Music Row. Most of them didn't even look up. An 11-year-old girl with a dream wasn't exactly a hot signing in the country music industry. But rejection didn't kill her dream, it focused it. She realized if she wanted people to take her seriously, she had to write songs that no one else could write. Songs that only she could tell. She picked up a guitar when she was 12 and learned 3 chords. That's all it took. The first song she wrote, Lucky You, wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Every line, every verse, every chorus came from a place that was real. And that mattered. Her parents could see it. She wasn't just dabbling. She was obsessed. They started making real sacrifices. Her mom left her job. They drove her to songwriting sessions, helped her book gigs at small venues. The Swift family bet everything on a dream. And in 2004, they packed up their life in Pennsylvania and moved to Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. It was the kind of move that changes everything. Taylor started high school fresh, but also out of place. She wasn't the popular girl. She was the girl who brought her guitar to lunch, who wrote songs about the kids who ignored her. She didn't fit in, and she turned that feeling into lyrics. Her songs became her way of surviving. One day, she performed at the Bluebird Cafe, a small but legendary venue in Nashville. Sitting in the crowd was Scott Borchetta, a record executive who was starting his own label, Big Machine Records. He didn't just see a singer, he saw a storyteller, a hurricane of raw potential wrapped in a teenage girl with curls and conviction. He signed her on the spot. At 16, Taylor released her debut single, Tim McGraw. She wrote it about a summer fling, knowing that when it ended, the boy would remember her whenever he heard that song on the radio. It wasn't just a love song, it was a blueprint. And it worked. The single climbed the charts. People heard that voice and knew they were listening to something new, something honest. Her debut album followed. And just like that, the girl who wrote songs in her bedroom became the girl who spoke to millions. But none of it happened overnight. None of it was easy. Every chord, every lyric, every sleepless night, she earned it. And this was only the beginning. Fame has this way of turning a teenager into a spectacle, and Taylor Swift, barely 16, was learning that the hard way. When her debut album dropped, it didn't just land, it hit. Teardrops on My Guitar became an anthem for every high school girl who'd ever watched someone they loved fall for someone else. It was tender and painful and beautiful in that way Taylor had of making heartbreak feel like a shared secret. But with every radio play, every interview, every award nomination, Taylor's world grew louder. Bigger. More demanding. She was still going to high school at the time, well, sort of. She switched to homeschooling because balancing tour life and geometry class just didn't work. Imagine being 17 and writing songs on the tour bus about boys who broke your heart, then logging into virtual school to finish your U.S. history assignment. That was her life. Split between stages and textbooks, between Grammy dreams and teenage growing pains. And Taylor wasn't just writing songs about her life. She was living them. Every diary entry turned verse, every inside joke turned chorus. Her second album, Fearless, came out in 2008 and did more than solidify her place in country music. It cracked her open to the world. Love Story hit like a thunderclap. Suddenly, Romeo and Juliet had a happy ending, and every teenage girl in America was screaming the lyrics from their bedroom windows. But that level of exposure comes with a price. Taylor was still figuring out who she was, still navigating heartbreak and trust and friendship, all under a microscope. When you're that young and that visible, mistakes don't just get noticed. They get recorded. Every boy she dated became a headline. Every award speech, every red carpet dress, every facial expression in the crowd analyzed, mocked, defended. She wasn't just a singer anymore. She was a symbol, a punchline, a muse, a role model, a lightning rod. And then came that night. The MTV Video Music Awards. Taylor had just won Best Female Video for You Belong With Me. It was a moment she dreamed of. She stepped up to the mic, all wide eyes and disbelief, when Kanye West stormed the stage. Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'ma let you finish, but Beyoncé had one of the best videos of all time. The crowd gasped. Taylor stood frozen. Millions watched live as a teenage girl had her moment stolen. That incident? It marked a shift. Suddenly, Taylor wasn't just America's sweetheart. She was a lightning rod for cultural debate. Was she too innocent? Too ambitious? Too calculated? Too vulnerable? But Taylor didn't fall apart. She did what she always did, she wrote. And Speak Now 2010 came out of that fire. Every song was written solely by her, no co-writers. It was her way of saying, this is mine. All of it. Songs like Back to December and Dear John weren't just catchy, they were confessions, journal entries with melodies. And for every person who called her dramatic, there were thousands who whispered, she gets it. She gets me. But Taylor wasn't just growing as a songwriter. She was growing as a woman. And as she stepped into adulthood, her music began shifting with her. With Red in 2012, she ditched the predictable country pop formula. She blended rock, electronic, and indie sounds. And with it came a messier, more chaotic Taylor. The one who said, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 22, and actually meant it. The one who wrote, All Too Well, a song so gut-wrenching it became legendary, not because it was a single, but because fans heard it and said, that's real. She started wearing red lipstick like armor. Started owning the fact that she dated, that she felt deeply, that she cared, unapologetically. But with that confidence came louder criticism. The media painted her as boy-obsessed, overly emotional, even manipulative. They turned her dating life into a map of America, each boyfriend a landmark, each breakup a scandal. But what they didn't realize was that Taylor wasn't just surviving the noise, she was studying it. And soon, she was going to take control of the narrative. But before that, she had to make a choice. Keep trying to play nice in a world that wouldn't let her win, or burn the whole thing down and start fresh. By the time 2014 rolled around, Taylor Swift was done playing by the rules, especially the ones written by people who never really got her. The polite, curly-haired country girl who once sang about fairy tales was now ready to turn the page. And with one bold decision, she did exactly that. She moved to New York City. Not just physically, but spiritually. The minute she stepped into the city skyline, with its noise and chaos and chopped off her hair, she changed her wardrobe. And then she released 1989, an album that didn't just flirt with pop music, it committed. No more banjos. No more Nashville twang. This was synths and beats and big, glossy hooks. And it worked. Oh boy, did it work. Shake It Off exploded across the airwaves. It was catchy, sure, but more than that, it was defiant. A sparkling middle finger to the critics, the tabloids, the ex-boyfriends, the meme makers. Taylor had been watching the world mock her every move for years, and now she was laughing with them, on her own terms. Then came Blank Space, a song that turned the media's version of Taylor into a cartoon character. She leaned all the way in, writing about herself as the crazy girlfriend, the hopeless romantic, the emotional hurricane, and exposed the absurdity of it all. It was clever. It was sharp. And it was her most successful single yet. 1989 didn't just win Album of the Year at the Grammys. It redefined who Taylor Swift was. She was no longer just a crossover success. She was the pop star of her generation. But the truth? Reinvention comes with a cost. As her fame grew even more colossal, so did the pressure. Suddenly, every friendship she had was under scrutiny. Her girl squad, a rotating cast of models, actresses, and musicians, became both a symbol of empowerment and a target of cynicism. People began to wonder, was Taylor curating her image too carefully? Was it all real? Or was it just branding? And behind the scenes, the feud with Kanye West, which had simmered since 2009, boiled over. In 2016, Kanye released Famous, a song in which he claimed credit for Taylor's success and called her out by name in a line that sent shockwaves through pop culture. At first, Taylor publicly disapproved. But then Kim Kardashian, Kanye's wife at the time, posted edited phone footage that painted Taylor as a liar, someone who had allegedly approved the lyric all along. The internet exploded. The hashtag Taylor Swift is over party trended for days. The backlash wasn't just loud, it was vicious. Suddenly, she wasn't just the butt of jokes, she was the villain. People called her fake, manipulative, a snake. It wasn't criticism anymore, it was character assassination. So Taylor disappeared. No new posts. No red carpets. No interviews. Just silence. For a year, she vanished from public life. And in that silence, something powerful happened. She stopped trying to please everyone. Stopped trying to correct. She finally reemerged in 2017. She did it with an album called Reputation and a snake as its symbol. Gone was the girl who played the victim. This Taylor was darker, colder, angrier. She called out betrayal, betrayal by the media, betrayal by friends, and betrayal by lovers. But buried beneath the black lipstick and steel-eyed lyrics was a woman who had finally realized she didn't owe anyone anything. And yet, Reputation wasn't just a revenge record. In between the thunderous beats and veiled threats was a quieter, surprising truth. She had fallen in love. Not with another pop star or a Hollywood actor. This time, it was someone who wanted her, not the spotlight. Someone who loved the girl behind the lyrics. That relationship, quiet, steady, and real, would anchor her through one of the stormiest periods of her life. With Reputation, Taylor took control of her own story again. Not by asking for understanding, but by saying, here it is. Take it or leave it. She'd been America's sweetheart, the media's favorite piñata, the queen of romantic anthems, and now the architect of her own rebirth. And she was just getting started. When the storm of Reputation passed, what was left in its wake wasn't a scorched battlefield, it was a clear sky. Taylor Swift had burned down the facade, peeled back the layers, and now, for the first time in years, she was breathing in fresh air. In 2019, she came back into the light, literally and musically, with Lover. The album was soft where Reputation had been sharp, pastel where it had been pitch black. And while it still carried the weight of a woman who had fought to rebuild herself, it also shimmered with peace, contentment, and joy. The kind of joy that isn't loud or boastful, but gentle and earned. Lover, the title track, was a love letter to her private world, the world she'd built with Joe Alwyn, the British actor she'd been quietly dating for years. No paparazzi parades. No flashy Instagram reveals. Just two people choosing each other, again and again, away from the noise. But Lover wasn't just about romance. It was the first time Taylor let her political voice rise above a whisper. In You Need to Calm Down, she threw support behind the LGBTQ+ community with a message as bright and bold as a protest sign in glitter. Why are you mad when you could be glad? She called out online hate, stood up to prejudice, and made it clear that she was no longer interested in being apolitical. For years, she'd stayed quiet, out of fear, out of pressure, out of conditioning. But now, she'd had enough. She publicly endorsed a political candidate for the first time in her career, called out the dangers of white supremacy, and released a documentary, Miss Americana, that revealed just how tightly she'd been holding it all in. You could see it in her eyes, in the tears she wiped away on camera. The pain of silence. The exhaustion of being perfect. The tension between who she was told to be and who she truly was. It was raw. It was brave. It was real. Then 2020 hit. The world shut down. Tours were canceled. Red carpets disappeared. And like the rest of us, Taylor was left alone with her thoughts. But instead of falling silent, she wrote. And wrote. And wrote. In a surprise nobody saw coming, she dropped Folklore in July, an album unlike anything she'd ever made. No glitter, no radio hits, no flashy videos. Just quiet, introspective songs that felt like pages torn from a dusty old journal. She wove stories about teenage love triangles, lost ancestors, ghosts of relationships past. And though many of the songs weren't directly about her, they were her. Soft, observant, poetic, and achingly human. Critics adored it. Fans clung to it. In a year filled with uncertainty and grief, Folklore felt like a warm sweater in a cold room. Just when everyone thought she might take a break, she did it again, releasing Evermore, a sister album, just months later. The two records together were like twin lanterns in the dark, proof that creativity doesn't wait for perfect timing. But as always, the light came with its own shadows. Behind the scenes, Taylor was fighting another battle, this time for ownership. Her master recordings, her original albums from Taylor Swift through Reputation, had been sold without her consent to someone she didn't trust. It was a gut punch. Years of work, sold like merchandise. So she did something no pop star had ever done before. She decided to re-record everything. Every album. Every note. Every emotion. And just like that, Taylor Swift declared that her story wouldn't be stolen. She'd write it again, on her own terms. From scratch if she had to. She began with Fearless, Taylor's version, and Red, Taylor's version, both massive successes, filled with old memories made new again. Fans cried over the 10-minute version of All Too Well. Now a short film, now a cultural moment, now finally complete. She wasn't just reclaiming her music, she was reclaiming her voice. And with it, a legacy that could no longer be rewritten by anyone but her. By the time the dust settled around her re-recordings, Taylor Swift had done what few artists ever accomplish in their lifetimes. She didn't just survive the music industry, she bent it. She exposed its cracks, called out its power players, and then built her own empire brick by brick, melody by melody, lyric by lyric. And then she did something else no one expected. She went back on tour. But this wasn't just any tour. In 2023, the Eras Tour launched like a rocket, an all-consuming, stadium-shaking, 3-hour journey through every version of herself she had ever been. Country Taylor, Pop Taylor, Revenge Taylor, Folklore Taylor. Each era, a chapter, each song a scar, a triumph, a time capsule. People flew across oceans to see her. They camped out in parking lots, made friendship bracelets, painted signs, cried in crowds of 70,000 strangers who somehow all knew the words. The Eras Tour wasn't a concert, it was communion. For Taylor, it was a homecoming. She was finally performing with complete ownership over her music. The songs that were taken from her? They now belonged to her again, and her fans were right there, singing every syllable like a battle cry. And let's talk about those fans for a second. Swifties, some of the most loyal, passionate, borderline academic fans in the world. They dissected lyrics like scripture, broke down Easter eggs like cryptographers, and defended Taylor like she was family. Because to many of them, she was the girl who got them through high school, the voice that made heartbreaks survivable, the reminder that it's okay to feel too much, to hope too hard, to start over when you need to. But even as she conquered stadiums, broke records, and topped charts again and again, Taylor's world kept shifting in quiet, personal ways. The long, private relationship she'd shared with Joe Alwyn came to an end. It wasn't messy. It wasn't tabloid fodder. It was just real. Two people growing, changing, loving, letting go. And for the first time, Taylor didn't hide from the pain. She put it in her music, in the stories she told between songs, in the ache behind her eyes when she played Champagne Problems to a silent stadium full of people who had been there, too. Through it all, she stayed creating. Always. Rumors swirled of new albums, of secret recordings, of poetry, of screenplays. Because for Taylor, the art doesn't stop when the spotlight fades. It lives in her bones. She'd become more than a singer, more than a songwriter. She was a storyteller, a businesswoman, a producer, a fighter, a friend, a feminist, a legend in real time. There was a time when people asked, who's Taylor Swift, anyway? But now? Now they ask, what hasn't she done? She turned heartbreak into history, scandal into symphony, rejection into revolution. And maybe that's the real magic of her story. It's not that she became a star. It's that she became herself, over and over again, each version more fearless, more complicated, more real than the last. And as she stands now, on stages across the world, older but still glowing, wiser but still wide-eyed, Taylor Swift isn't just telling her story. She's inviting us to remember that we all have the power to rewrite ours. And maybe, just maybe, she's only getting started.